This time on Captain Castle's Laboratory, you're seeing double. It's because I got two pieces that came in that are the same, that have slightly different issues. We're going to fix one on camera, the other one I'll fix off camera. But I wanted to show you the two pieces. So here's the one that came in first. So it doesn't like the run or start. And here's the one that came in second. So they pretty much have the same problem. That's why I'm going to fix one on camera to show you how, and the other one probably off camera to show you. Well, not to show you, because the first one should fix it both. So I'm going to move this one out of the way. So it's safely out of the way. And now let's look at this guy. So both of them came in with the same issue. You have to nudge them a lot to keep them going. So sometimes they'll start, and sometimes they won't, which is indicative of one of three things on most of these. One, cracked or broken gear that's slipping. Two, slipping belt. Three, motors going bad, it's intermittent. I have seen on some of these rotating ones, if you look closely, you can see it more on the other one. You can see right in here, that's where this is scraping. Sometimes there's so much scraping, it's too much resistance, and they bind. So I don't think that's the problem with either one of these. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the sign so we don't break it. If you don't have this piece, the sign plugs into a port right there. You can see it. You can't put it in backwards because this is offset. So if you try to put it in backwards, it doesn't go in. You just turn it around and it fits right down inside. There's a few things that Lemax does that have the smaller power port to transfer power so you can remove things. Like the ice skating ring, you can unplug both trees. Same thing. So we're going to set that out of the way. So we're going to flip her over. The gumdrops appear to be taller than everything, so I should be able to set her on the gumdrops. There we go. Like so. And if it's like most of these, underneath these 6 feet are going to be our access screws. Then you have this that you can break free if you need to replace the wire or replace the power port. That's what that's for. You pop it open, there is glue, and replace it, and then glue it shut. So, put this up here with the cocoa sign. So there you go, there's one screw. There's two. Usually these just come right out. They're usually all dry rotted to where it doesn't adhere anymore. I'm surprised these are as good as they are. If you can't salvage these, you can make your own piece of foam. You can cut them out and then glue them in. Sometimes you go to the hardware store and buy them. They usually sell them in the furniture section or cabinetry section, because these glue-in dots that are self-adhesive in are also used on doors, so that when you close your cabinet, they don't slam and it's a soft. At least the old cabinets. The new cabinets now just have hinges that do it for you. But or you don't even have to use them. I know on some pieces I have that have had things like this. One of them gets lost and I just take them all out so it sits level, because I put all mine on mats. So with mats, I'm not too concerned. So now we just remove all the screws, which there's only 6. holding it together so I can flip it back over, because most likely the top is what pops off. You get all 6. Yep. All 6 are out, but I don't see anything wanting to come up. Normally it's this edge that pops, but it is glued on because of the lights. Let's see, does the base come up? I doubt there's a hidden screw underneath the cap, but let's just double check just to make sure. So set this back down. Nope, just a power port. And this one's not glued on like some of the other ones out there. And there's a little dab of glue on the clip though. That's good. So if you push too hard, it helps hold it in place. This center section should just come right out from what I'm seeing. This whole section here on the side looks like it's adhered. Is there a hidden screw underneath the sticker? No. Small enough? No. Looking for something small enough I can shove in the hole to try and push on the standoff, but everything I have so far is too big. Not long enough. Feels like there's something holding the center. I figure this would come apart easy like a lot of this style. It's the same base they use on like the Roundup and stuff. It's usually the bottom comes up. But it doesn't look like this bottom would come up. It's all glued together. Very interesting. I'm just looking to see if maybe the cups are screwed down and the center plate pops around them. I'm looking for anything that tells me how this thing comes apart. Usually you take out the 6 screws and the whole center falls out, but it's not moving. And these aren't bound up. I can rotate them. You can hear the motor. The motor sounds like it's over in this area. Interesting. Let's see if nope, no movement. This centerpiece has got to lift out. I have to pause this so I can figure this one out. 99% of the time you unscrew it and the whole thing just falls apart. Why is this one not falling apart? I've already wasted over 10 minutes trying to figure this out. I'm assuming this is all one piece because of these lights right in here. And I can see the fixture. It looks like it's all glued together, this top ring. And there's no movement. There is some movement at the base where this attaches to this. So these two pieces, but it doesn't seem to want to come apart. It also looks like it's glued. This is a lot looser now that I've unscrewed it, but it doesn't want to release. So I'm not sure why this, you see the whole deck's moving. It doesn't want to release from the rest. So either these screws hold this outer side down and it's got some glue or adhesive from maybe when they stuck on the whipped cream or gumdrops that got into the lip, or the center section comes out and it's just caught, like it's pressed onto something, or it's bound in the gears, but the gears seem to be moving pretty freely as I can rotate past the motor. Yeah, so I'm gonna tinker around this for a little bit, stop wasting your time, until I figure out how this thing opens, and we'll go from there. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I found the trick. I've already started getting it to separate. There is glue around the top, hence the reason that's on. But the biggest thing holding them are these 6 gumdrop candy canes. I've already freed up a couple. They're glued to the bottom behind these shields. Yeah, the shields right there. But they're also glued to the top. And I found the easiest way to do this, besides breaking the candy canes, is to have one left. Is I take a very small blade screwdriver and I apply heat to the glue at the top and I poke it until it gets soft. You gotta be careful because this is all plastic. So the plastic's gonna get soft too. And I can stick the screwdriver in the glue and just start tapping at it until I can get it to separate. You might be able to do this with an X-Acto knife. I tried it with the... There we go. You should be clear of it now. And if you have any glue remnants, you can use an X-Acto blade and do the same thing to separate it. This one was definitely designed not to be opened, even though they put the screws on the bottom. So I think they're all separated now. You're probably going to break them. So have your super glue handy. And now we've got to separate the rest of this ring. It's also glued down. Like that. Why aren't you turning off? There we go. Now it'll turn off here in a minute. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. See, these two broke, so they're going to get glued together. What's kind of cool is they're hollow, so you could almost drill a hole through the bottom and then run lights into these top gumdrops. If you wanted to customize your own, put little white LEDs in these things and make them light up. But when I was trying to heat them, these two cracked, and then I finally found a way to do it. You can see that our 4 are intact. So unfortunately, you might end up breaking parts of your piece. They did not make this as easy as it looked. A couple of screws, you're like, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, apparently not. Now we're going to turn it upside down inside of itself, because there's the main circuit board. There's a distribution board, which also does this, the lighting. So that's what makes your lights flash around the outside. Your speaker's connected down there with your motor. We know the motor's good, but we probably have a broken gear or the belt slipping. The belt feels okay, but let's check it all out. So now I know for the other one I gotta fix that I need to heat up the gumdrop candy canes, and that I need to put heat around this edge, because you can see the glue there, right there, right there. Yeah, this was never intended to be taken apart, which none of them are technically, but they really, really, really didn't want you to take this one apart. Oh, this one has the impossible gear. That's awesome. Let's fire it up and take a look at this gearbox. Probably helps if I, you know, plug it in. And let's take a look at these gears. That's weird. I am putting a lot of pressure on this, and this is not skipping or even slowing down. This cutting into my thumb. So this motor's nice and strong. There's some excessive grease around it. Belt's not slipping. Slipping a little, but that's not the problem, I don't think. So let's replace the belt. See if I can, if that's the problem. It could just be the belt. I mean, it's still spongy, but it might be just a hair too loose for the amount of friction it has to overcome to start up. Too big. There we go. Right size. It's a little thicker, but it's the right size belt. Still can't stop it with my thumb, and that stops the. Huh? The motor stopped. Like the motor physically stopped before I put a full pressure on it. Maybe the motor's going out. Yeah, it's the motor. It's not moving. So this one's losing its motor. That's probably because of the grease that I see around it. Let's change the belt. Let me get these belts out of the way so I don't spill them on the ground or mix them up with something else. There's the belt. Oh yeah, this motor's full of grease. You see how shiny that is? You might be able to see all the grease. I'll pop off the pulley. Oh, hopefully you can see all that grease that's on this face. Yeah, it's nasty. Well, that would probably explain the motor is filling with grease and it's dying. Well, I want to see if this motor is overpowering. So I'm going to turn, oops, I'm going to turn on my power supply here. I'm going to set it for 4.5 volts. And we're going to give it some juice and see what the power consumption is, and then see if it drops to 0 or if it goes to max because it's shorted out. Motor died. It died on its own. Just clip that just to make sure it's not a bad connection. So when I stall the motor, yeah, the motor dies completely. It stalls at 1/4 of an amp. So let's grab a new motor right here. So 0.26 is what it stalled at, and it wouldn't restart. So here's a brand new motor. It's actually running at a lower amperage just at normal speed. Let's see if I can stall it. I stalled it at 0.3 and it fires right back up. It's drawing half the power that this one's drawing. They're the same motor, just different face. One's white, one's silver. And I think that's the problem. I think this motor is stalling out, which is good, because if it shorted out, the whole unit could go, or if it completely shorted out, it could fry the blob chip on the bottom of this board, back feeds. So it's a good thing that it's caught before the full extent of the damage is done. So most factory Lemax motors have this white or silver disc with 3 holes. Two of the holes are for the screws, and the third hole is for it's threaded, but I don't know what it's for as far as a screw mount, because there's really no offset screw mounts like that. But they all do it. You can see this one, that offset one's right there. So I've never come across any that have been offset. So I am going to go with that this thing is stalling out, which, like I said, is good, because if it stalls out, it drops the power to 0 until you start it back up. But at one point, it's going to stall out, and it's going to keep the amperage increasing. One of the previous ones I just did, the amperage was going up to 2 amps on a bad motor. 2 amps is way too much. It's more than the Lemax power supply, which is generally between 600 and 1,000 milliamps. 1,000 milliamps is 1 amp. So it can double to triple the power consumption for the power supply, and that's how you burn out power supplies. It's also how you burn out your house, or carnival piece, or whatever you want to refer to it as, because all that power, 2 amps, is going through that circuit board, and those tracks and those components are not designed for 2 amps. This whole unit is supposed to draw like a 1/2 amp or less. Generally, these things only draw, you know, 1/3 of an amp at the most. I don't know if this one says it or not. I'll wait for my soldering iron to get warm. Not a child's toy. 4.5 volts. I don't think this one has the amperage on it. A lot of the times they put it on the box. Sometimes they put it on the unit. Indoor use only. Lights, sounds, and motion. Yeah. 280 milliamps. Right there. So 280 milliamps is, well, 0.33 forever, or just round off to 4, is 1/3 of an amp. So this is supposed to draw less than 1/3 of an amp, and the motor is going to 1/4 of it before it dies. So I'm gonna lean towards it's gonna be a defective motor, especially since it's full of grease. Which is probably the same thing with the other one. Most of the time on Lemax, they're defective motors. It's just the way they work. It's not because they're crap motors. They're all pretty much made in the same place. It's the fact they use too much lubrication that gets into everything. That's the problem. So, a little heat shrink. So The biggest takeaway from this one is, besides unscrewing the 6 screws in the bottom, you're going to have to break the top free from its glue, and you're going to have to separate the 6 gumdrop candy cane poles, or they're going to crack in the middle, like 2 of these did. So there is a really good chance you're going to need to carry some glue with you. I would recommend, if you're going to put these back onto the base, that you either use hot glue, not hard glue like they did, or not glue them at all, and just let the 6 screws do their thing. Just because, again, eventually you're going to have to work on this thing. It's not because it's a pile of junk, it's just because anything mechanical, electrical, or pneumatic, hydraulic, everything fails. Nothing lasts forever. Everything breaks down. I'm just going to wipe off this extra grease so it doesn't get into the motor. And now we're going to solder, and then heat shrink, and then put it back in and do a partial reassemble where we'll see if it stalls out with the teacups. You can use the heat gun or make it fast and just use a lighter. And it's quieter because now look, there's no noise. I don't have to wait for the thing to cool down. Apparently that doesn't fit with the motor there. So we'll take one screw out. Turn the motor. I gotta take both screws out. So it's all back together. New belt, new motor. Now, let's screw this back on. Caught me off guard for a second. The that hole that's right there, that big hole, it's because this plate's used, this generic motor plate they use. That's where one of these standoffs goes through on most of their pieces. So I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe this one fits between. So it's nice if you get a parts piece, and let's say this, you lost this section or you broke it. Now a lot of their houses use this exact same disc, this exact same gearbox, especially if it runs the impossible gear. That one right there. It's going to have the exact same gearbox. And the reason there's so many holes is because if this had a second layer on it, that's what these holes are for. And depending on what's near it, then these holes here, so you could turn the motor 90 degrees or 70 degrees approximately, so you can move the wires. And then that is for a screw standoff. If you watch other videos or seen other stuff, you may have seen it before, where the standoff, when you set it down, slides through. One advantage with the broken pieces, because I know which way is which. Technically, you should be able to screw it up only for the fact that it has a notch cut out for the entrance to the stairs, and it has a notch cut out for the power port. I want to make sure when I set it down I don't pinch the wires underneath the screw hole. The wires I'm concerned about are the wires that come from the power. I guess you can move those over a little. You can. There we go. And we're in. Can't believe that. Alright. Now are we in? Yes. It's quieter. I don't hear the motor as much. Oh. Let's try it again. See if it'll start. Look at that. Yay, thumbs up. All right. I think we're doing pretty good on fixing this. The candy canes I'm going to glue back together, the two that are cracked. These look okay. You really can't tell they're separated because they went back into place. And I might have to heat this one up a little bit because it's bent from the heat. So we'll get that thing on so it's ready. Let's put some of these screws back in. We'll take a look at this thing at night. Or night, in the dark, low light. I don't know why I call it night. It's not even noon here. But I would not recommend gluing the top back on. Only for the fact that you're going to have to work on it again in the future. Unless you're deciding to sell it or something. I don't think they glued it on for vibration, but we're going to find out. We're going to put all 6 screws in and make sure nice and snug, and then we're going to turn it back on and make sure that the top doesn't vibrate, and that's why they glued it. They did it as a shock absorption. Shouldn't. If the gears are relatively flat, then there should be no vibration in the mechanism. New motor, there's no vibration from the motor. With a good belt and good pulley and pulleys and good gears, you shouldn't have any vibration that causes a chatter. But let's find out. Let's see if that's why they glued it together, or if they just did it to make it miserable so you guys have to throw it away and find a new one. So that's all 6. Let's make sure they're all snug. Usually I put them in until they're okay, and then I go back and tighten them all up so that way it pulls it square. I forgot I put the rubber feet on top of the sign. No vibration. The lip doesn't come up from all the screws. So yeah, don't glue it back together. It's just going to be a waste of your time and material. So now, let's see what it looks like in low light. Then I'm going to get the heat gun and fix this, glue those, and put the 6 feet back under. When you put the feet under, use either rubber contact cement or hot glue. Don't use a hard glue because then you'll never get the screws out. One more light. Boom. Look at that. See, to me, it'd be interesting if those lit up. That would be so neat. Just for the fact that you just have a sign and the outer ring of lights, which in the camera, it's a lot more light again than it looks like, which I say every time, because LEDs overpower the camera's lens. Like, this thing is obnoxiously white in the camera. It looks like a white bar. It's not. You can make out the whipped topping appearance on it. You can make out the grooves and the lines and the discoloration where they've touched up the paint and made it gray. The Cocoa Cups is not that bright. It's a dimly lit sign. It's not overly bright. The pink lights are way brighter than the sign. You can see the pink lights are intensely bright according to the camera, but they're not blinding. But yeah, it doesn't look bad. It's not a bad piece. If you have a problem with rubbage, not garbage, but rubbing, you can use a little PTFE lubrication, which is what's used on all the gears, or take some of it off of that gearbox and put it on the edge of these teacups where you see the ones that are rubbing. Like this one and this one are rubbing, and this one and this one aren't. You can also, if you want to disassemble this whole thing when it's upside down, take all the screws out, remove the teacups. You can also clean this with wood polish, which works too. A little more work, putting a little dab of PTFE lubrication and letting the cups pull them in, meaning when it smears it in its own path. The only downside is now you have the lubrication exposed to the top where the dust is going to form. When dust and grease get together, when the ratio is just right, it becomes like concrete, so it stops the motion. So if you're not rubbing too bad, where it's just barely touching every once in a while, like right there, wouldn't worry about it. You could also take the cups off and sand them. If you saw when it was upside down, if you take the big gear out of the middle, you can then access these, and then there's a gear with a screw that goes through that screws into these. It's the same as a couple of the other rides that look like this from different eras of Lemax. And then you can sand the bottom of the cups, meaning that you're removing enough material so they don't touch. Right now they're not touching at all, so I think just lifting the thing apart, I'm just checking. Yeah, there's about the thickness of a piece of paper like on this one, where it would touch right there. So it might have just been just so glued that maybe this wasn't square. You know, you glue it on, and if it glues on at a slight angle because the glue's heavier on one side than the other, the 6 screws just pull it straight down. So, but there's no rubbing. That might be another reason why it's quieter. New motor, draws less power, and a new way to hold it in place, meaning no glue, and it's shifted the plate a little. So, a couple small touch-ups to do on it. I want to push this back in, a little glue on these two guys here, and then put the 6 feet on, and we're good. So I'm sure you all know how to use glue and put things, that's kind of small stuff, back on. So this takes care of the Cocoa Cups ride, and hopefully it's not too hard for you. Get your heat gun out, find a small pointy jeweler screwdriver or maybe even a pick, and heat up those 6 and pop the tops. If they break, glue them back together. They're hollow, so if you want to upgrade them, it might be worth it if it's yours. And then slowly work your way around underneath these lights without damaging the light strip. I found a weak spot and I started prying, and then where necessary applied a little heat. You don't want to apply a lot of heat, because if you do, you'll damage this light strip, and then you'll have to try and solder it back together. And because it's a tape light and not a string of lights, it's a little harder to deal with. Turn the volume down. So that's something you'll have to deal with. Now it does rub when I turn it. When I tip it like this, it's rubbing on the back. So there you go. There's the first one. And I'm going to start now on the second one. And now I know how to do it. So now I know how to take this thing apart so we can get both of these guys working. Alright, so until the next video, have a good one. Quick addendum. I didn't realize till I plugged in the second one, the blue lights didn't work. is just flashing pink. Now you notice it's flashing pink and blue. One of the blue LEDs that's soldered to the strip was so corroded it broke free. Unfortunately, that makes it really hard to fix, but it can be done, as you can see. But be aware that not only can heat cause them to separate, but corrosion, and the LEDs are surface mount. So it's a little rectangle with 2 pads on either side versus a round with 2 pins sticking out. So, quick addendum. Now it's done. The other one's done too. They both were the same thing. Bad belt and a motor that stalled out. So, go figure. Alright, till the next one. Again, thanks for watching.